Hi, welcome. It is 3 minutes after 10 today, so we're starting a little bit early this Friday. I guess we just had too much show for today, so we're going to get a little bit more of it in. A few extra minutes will be good stuff. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. You've reached the Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS 98.1 AM 1220, your hometown station. You can also find us at hometownstation.com. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I like it whenever somebody listens. It's always nice to know that people are on the other end of the microphone, I suppose. Today we're going to talk about all about foreclosure defense, a topic that is near and dear to my heart. As a matter of fact, I had a much more complicated show planned for today, spent some time putting it together, and I had a call from a client on the way in today, and she said something very prescient, which is, why don't you just talk about foreclosure defense? Because that's what most people want to talk about these days, and I understand why. So we're going to do a little bit of market wrap-up stuff, just kind of affordability. We'll get deeper into that next week. And then the rest of the show is going to be all things foreclosure. What is a foreclosure? What are the timelines in California? Most importantly, how to defend yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're also going to talk about foreclosure rescue scams that I've seen out there, because with the state of the economy, with the interest rate going up and up and up and up, we are going to see more and more foreclosures. We're seeing the numbers we chart foreclosures in Los Angeles County and Ventura County pretty tightly in my office. And I can tell you, in the last couple of months, those numbers have been rising fairly steadily. Now, it hasn't been a seismic shift. They haven't gone up 20% or something crazy like that, but they are going up, and it's getting worse and worse and worse as we go. So let's talk about why, and I think that has a lot to do with the market wrap-up as well. The reason that foreclosures are increasing, the reason that our market in general is happening, is because those of you who pay any attention to this sort of stuff know it's the interest rate. The Fed has been on a tear. The Federal Reserve has been on a tear to raise the interest rate in this country. They have decided that they're going to crush inflation, and whenever you hear a report that says the Fed is looking to crush inflation, substitute the word inflation for the housing market, because the majority of inflation right now is found in the housing market. It's also found in milk and gold and gas and all sorts of other commodities, but the housing market is leading the way. In Santa Clarita, in the last 3 years alone, our prices, the average sales price of a single family home, has gone from $606 to $838. That is an average price. That's not the highest, that's not the lowest, that is the average for a single family home. And by the way, that $838 is up 3% from last year. But from 3 years ago, from 2020, that is a jump of 27%. That's a ton. I mean, according to the Southland Regional Association of Realtors, the average single-family home in the Santa Clarita Valley as of August of 2023 is now $838,000. That means if a buyer put 20% down now, that's a down payment of $167,000. Their mortgage amount would be about $670,000. That means their average monthly payment would be $4,757 plus another approximately, say, $200 a month in insurance, if you can find insurance, and another $900 a month in taxes for a fully amortized, fully impounded payment of approximately $5,857 a month. So think about that for a second. If you want to buy an average single-family home in the Santa Clarita Valley in August of 2023, well, you'd have to go back in time, I suppose, to do that, but now in 2023, you're going to pay about $838,000 for it. If you put 20% down, that means you're going to have to come up with $167,000, $168,000 to put down, and your payment is still, after putting all that money down, your payment is still going to be nearly $6,000 a month. Now, here's the really mind-blowing part. This is the part that gets to me, and this is why the market's in the trouble it's in, and this is why we're heading into such choppy waters, and this is why I say what I say about the economy and about the real estate market in general. 3 years ago, it's just 36 months, not that long. 3 years ago, in August of 2020, according to the same Southland Regional Association of Realtors, that same house that we're discussing that is now $838 would have been 27% lower. It would have been $660. So that's a $178,000 increase in value in the past 36 months. My goodness, that's almost $5,000 per month. So if you owned a house in 2020, I did. I have a couple of them actually. They've gone up on average $5,000 a month. That's not sustainable. I mean, it's great if you own a house. It's horrible if you're looking to buy one, but it's just unfortunately not sustainable. And that's really the big question here is affordability leads to sustainability. You cannot have one without the other. Right now, houses are not affordable. They're way too expensive. The interest rates are way too high. As a result, you do not have affordability, which means you don't have sustainability. And that is going to be our problem because additionally, 3 years ago, the mortgage rate wasn't 6.75, it was 3%. So the total payment wouldn't have been on that same deal we were talking about before. That total payment wouldn't be almost $6,000 a month. It would be approximately $3,000 a month. The actual difference between the two, when you work out the math, is $2,731 a month, or $32,000, almost $33,000 a year. So if you bought that same house in 2020, you would pay almost $33,000 less in your mortgage payment per year, almost $3,000 a month less in your mortgage payment per year. Also, your mortgage amount would be less. If it was the house you bought in now is going to leave you with a mortgage amount of $670,000 that you're servicing the debt on, whereas that same thing 3 years ago, you'd be servicing the debt on $528,000. So that's a $142,000 difference. So those of you who aren't, I know I went through this kind of quickly. So just to wrap up here, a buyer for an average Santa Clarita Valley home today will pay $178,000 more for their house. The mortgage loan will be $142,000 more. Their interest rate will be 4.65% higher, and their payment will be nearly $3,000 a month or $36,000 a year more to buy the same house. That is not affordable. That is not sustainable. And we are not talking about the biggest houses in the valley. We are not talking 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot houses in Stevenson Ranch or in Sand Canyon, which are always very nice. We're talking about the average single family home in Santa Clarita. We're talking about Canyon Country. We're talking about Saugus. We're talking about, frankly, the more affordable parts of Valencia. And that is just ridiculous, and it's not sustainable. I mean, ultimately, very few people can afford a $5,800 a month mortgage payment, a $6,000 a month mortgage payment. Even fewer people have seen their incomes rise by 27% in the past 3 years. This is why the Fed is raising the interest rates in such an unprecedented way. They want to and need to cool the real estate market. So, regarding the market in general, the Fed's going to keep raising interest rates. I know I sound like a broken cuckoo clock on this, going off all the time. The Fed is going to raise it. They have 2 more meetings. They have one in, I think, what is it? One in November and one in October, one in November, one in December. But anyway, they are going to raise it at one of those 2 meetings. For sure, it's going to go up. Now, when the Fed raises the interest rate, there's not a 1-to-1 correlation between the mortgage interest rate. But what happens is, money, if it stays in the stock market, doesn't run to the bond market. In other words, if the stocks don't get scared, then that means the interest rate will rise as well. So what I think is that the money in the stock market will not run to the bond market. There'll hopefully be no additional bank failures, which we saw earlier this year. So the 30-year mortgage rate will continue to climb, and it will likely reach over 8% before the end of this year. And that, if that doesn't terrify you, it should. Because we thought it would be Armageddon if it reached over 7%, but people are still spending, and housing prices are still going up because of restricted inventory. So the Fed's going to keep after this. Until the rates fall back to below 6%, the market will not normalize. So over the next 12 to 18 months, housing prices will start to soften. They have to, and they will likely decrease significantly until the interest rate normalizes below 6%. So the upshot of this, if you're a seller who doesn't need to buy another house after you sell, do it now. This is your market. If you're a one-time seller and you're not buying something else, you're retiring, you're doing whatever, you're moving to another country, whatever it is, now is your time to sell. If you're looking to sell a house, do it now. If you're looking to buy a house, best advice I can give you, lock in today's rate. If you locked in a rate 30 years ago, if you locked in a rate 30 days ago, your rate would have been below 7%. Now you're looking at 7.5%, maybe even higher, depending on where you're going, what your credit looks like. So lock in the rate. Also, consider buying down the rate. You can pay ahead to buy down a mortgage rate. We can talk about that maybe a little in a future show, but you can buy down the interest rate to a more reasonable level. And really, the best advice I can give you right now, it's a bit of a risk. Consider looking at an adjustable rate mortgage. Adjustable rate mortgages are going to be cheaper than fixed rate mortgages, and the risk you're taking is the interest rate going to go up? It's always a risk. Now, I'm here to tell you the interest rate's going to go up over the rest of this year. We're going to get over 8%. And I think it's going to start to fall at the beginning of maybe first or second quarter of next year. It'll start to come back into correction. But it's only going to come back into correction when the housing prices start to fall. Now, in other parts of the country, they are coming down. Ask anyone in San Francisco, especially in the city. They will tell you their prices are down on average 14%. Same thing is true in Seattle, Austin, all over, Boise, Idaho, all sorts of places, Chicago. All sorts of places are seeing what the market calls corrections. What it really means is prices are coming down. And so that has not hit Southern California yet, but it will. We cannot sustain a 27% rise in prices over a 36-month period. It'd be nice if we could, but the market just will not keep pace. It just won't. So that's my market wrap-up. If you have a house to sell, do it now. Get it on the market. Get it going. If you're a buyer, if you're looking to get into the market because your life is dictating that, that's usually what most people are buying these days. Just be prepared for higher interest rates. And my advice would be to do something more temporary, like an adjustable rate, with an eye toward converting that to a fixed rate in the future. But it is a risk. If I'm wrong and the interest rates continue to go up, which I cannot imagine, but if they get over 9-10%, the least of your problems is going to be your adjustable mortgage rate, because I think it would be rioting in the streets, quite frankly. We just can't sustain this. We cannot sustain the interest rate rises that the Fed has foisted upon us. And they keep content to do it more. And they've said, I've been saying since April that we're going to hit 8% by the end of the year. And I hate to be right about this. It bothers me that I'm right. I wish I was wrong, but I'm not. So so pay attention, because that's what's going on. Money is getting more expensive. We can talk about studying the credit cards and all that other stuff in the future, but that is the wrap up of the market. That is where we're at. Interest rates are going up. Housing prices remain high. And the reason housing prices remain high, and this is my last market thing we talk about today, is because people like myself, who over the past 2-3 years got refinances, well, just go with the statistics. Fannie Mae tells us that 70% of every single mortgage in the United States, every single mortgage in the United States, according to Fannie Mae, 70% of those, that is, are under 4%, 4% or under. 70% of the market has a mortgage rate of 4% or under. Why would you go into a 7.5% or an 8% mortgage rate? Additionally, 85% of every single mortgage in the United States is under 5%. So that means the only mortgages in this country who are over 5%, who are people who would be more willing to sell right now, people who might be willing to refinance right now because the interest rates are so high, that's only 15% of the market. That's it. The entire market is 15% right now. The other 85% isn't selling unless they have to. So what that means is there's far fewer properties on the market. In Santa Clarita here, we're down about 40% overall. In the San Fernando Valley, it's about 36%. Other parts of the country, it's about 35%. So it's safe to say that between 35 to 40% of the houses, this is volume we're talking about, of the houses that would ordinarily be sold in 2023 will not be sold. Think about whatever it is you do for a living, and imagine doing 35 to 40% less of it this year. If you sell tires, imagine selling 35 to 40% fewer tires this year. What does your business look like? If you run a grocery store, imagine selling 35 to 40% fewer groceries this year. What does your business look like? Whatever you want to apply this to, imagine your sales, your income, everything else being down by 35 to 40%. So I've been saying for months now, if you know a realtor, give them a hug, because my goodness, my industry could use it, because the Fed is coming after us. That's what they're doing. They think that most of the inflation of the market is in the real estate market. They're not wrong there. I mean, Santa Clarita, 27% rise in 36 months is ridiculous. And they're going to beat that up. They're going to beat that up until they get that number back under control. Until they see prices starting to fall, they're going to continue to rise the interest rate. So honestly, it's actually kind of better if the interest rate if the prices start to fall earlier than later. But they're being incredibly resilient because we have a strong economy, particularly in places where people want to live, like Southern California. So be prepared. That's all I can really tell you. You know, forewarned is forearmed, as they say. So just be aware. And anyone who tells you the interest rate is coming down before the end of the year, I would very much like to have that conversation with them, because I would like to find some hope in this, and I don't see much. So interest rates are going to keep coming up. We're going to continue to see restricted inventory, which is going to keep prices high. And so we have this weird phenomenon where both the interest rate and the prices are going up at the same time. Not supposed to work like that, not sustainable like that. We are heading toward a crash. Now, when I say crash, I don't think it's going to be the same kind of thing in 2008. It's going to be a correction. It's not going to be the soft landing the Fed is telling us all about, which would be nice. And housing prices, I think, are going to take a tumble. I don't think it's going to be too bad. I've been saying hopefully by the end of the year, we'd lose about 2 to 3%. Maybe that won't happen because of where we're at, but we're going to need to lose about 5%. We're going to deflate this market by about 5 to 10% before things get back on track and before the Fed's going to let the interest rate go back down. So your $800,000 house today needs to get down to being about a $700,000 house in the future before the Fed starts to take their foot off the gas with these interest rate increases. So hopefully that wasn't too boring for you. Let's talk about foreclosures, because I know that's what everyone wants to hear about, because we are seeing more and more and more of that. So we're going to get into foreclosures a little bit before the break. Let's start with just a basic definition, because I get so into this. I've been doing free foreclosure defense for people for the better part of 30 years, a little over that. I've been fighting with banks for the better part of 30 years, and we win most of the fights we get into because we're right and they're wrong. And I'll maintain that until the day I die, because the way the banking industry works, the way the mortgage industry works, in my view, let's just say it could be done better. They don't take proper care of their clients. They don't service their customers correctly. They break the law with impunity. And any of you who've been in trouble, who sought to get relief from your bank, knows what I'm talking about. It is difficult. It is ugly. It is nasty. And a foreclosure is what happens because your houses are worth more money now than they were when you took out your loan in most cases, and that makes you a target. Because banks like to say they don't make money on foreclosures, but I'm here to tell you, yes, they do. Banks make money on anything they can make money on. If they can find a way to make something a profit margin, you can bet they're going to do it because they're a bank. A friend of mine told me years ago, and I've been repeating this ever since. It's a great adage. Being mad at a bank acting scummy about money is like being mad at a shark for swimming. It's what banks do. Banks exist to increase shareholders, to maximize profit for their shareholders. Banks exist to maximize profit for their shareholders. That's it. And if they have to run you down and take your house to do it, they'll do it because they're looking to, that's the modus operandi. They're looking to increase profit margin for their shareholders. That is the reason for existence. And when a shark eats a surfer, the shark doesn't make a moral judgment. It doesn't think, well, that's a single father of two. I won't eat that guy. I'll move on to the next one. No, a shark is swimming, looks up, sees something it thinks is a seal, knows it's hungry, and eats it. That's it. There's no decision-making involved. And it's much the same thing with a foreclosure with a bank. If they can find a way to make a few pennies by screwing you over, they will. They just will. It's just the way it works. And don't be mad at them for it. It's just part of the way it works. There's no humanity there. There's no morality there. There just isn't. And that's the chief problem. But let's talk about what a foreclosure is. Let's start here. So what's a foreclosure? Definition. According to the California Courts Guide, a foreclosure is a legal process that forces the sale of a home to cover a debt. Foreclosure is when a lender uses the legal process to force the sale of a property, like a home, to cover debt. This can happen when somebody takes out a mortgage to buy a home and when someone stops making payments, otherwise known as defaulting on the mortgage. The company that owns the mortgage can force the sale of the property. A home can be foreclosed on for many kinds of debts. I get this question a lot, not just a mortgage. For example, homeowners associations, they can foreclose if you have a problem with your HOA and they get a lien against you. In some cases, unpaid dues and assessments for an HOA can get you. Or if there's a final court order, any kind of a judgment, that can send you into foreclosure. It says the homeowner owes money to a person or persons that company is able to foreclose and collect the money on the debt they are owed. Now, in California, we're unique. We're what's called a non-judicial state. So what that means is the vast majority of foreclosures in California are done with the tacit approval of the court, but not through the court. And that's an important distinction, which we're going to get into because it has a lot to do with how you defend yourself. Almost all mortgages in California have two things in them. One is called a power of sale clause. It's important you pay attention to this, the power of sale clause, because the power of sale clause is what gives a bank the authority, the ability to do a non-judicial foreclosure. Now, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I can't remember the last time I saw a mortgage loan, especially a conventional mortgage loan, that didn't have a power of sale clause in it. So you'd be hard pressed to find one. But if it doesn't, then they can't do a judicial foreclosure. They can't do a non-judicial foreclosure. They have to then do a judicial foreclosure. And the biggest difference there practically is a non-judicial foreclosure is quick. A judicial foreclosure takes years. Right now in California, judicial foreclosure is about 5 years. And no bank wants to take 5 years to foreclose on your house. Whereas a non-judicial foreclosure, quote unquote, regular foreclosure, the timeline for that is about 120 days, 200 days if you want to get fancy about from your first missed payment. We're going to talk about that a little as well as far as the timeline is concerned. So judicial versus non-judicial. Most of it's going to be non-judicial. That means the court just sort of signs off on it. Those of you guys who know the robo-signing scandal, that was all about fake documents before the court, led by B of A and others. And yeah, this is the kind of thing that the banks do. They game the system. They help design the system. So they absolutely know how to game it against the consumer. So that is what a foreclosure is. I think most of you guys know that. But a foreclosure is when a bank, other financial institutions, somebody you owe money to has a judgment against you, has a lien against your property, and that lien can be converted to a foreclosure to foreclose on the property, to take your property away from you. That is what a foreclosure is. It's terrifying when you get those notices in the mail because it is your single largest investment. It's where you lay your head at night. It's where your kids lay their heads at night. It's terrifying. It scares the heck out of people when they get that first notice. And the banks know that. And they use that as a weapon. They use fear as a weapon to get you to pay. It's not unlike dealing with the mob in some of your B movies, pay us or else. Your house looks very flammable, pay us or else. Now, as far as I know, I don't think any of those financial institutions are actually beating anybody up or actually burning down their houses. However, they do the financial equivalent of that. They will take your house and they will use every advantage they possibly can to make money at your expense. They will profit on your misery. That's what a foreclosure to me is a bank profiting at your misery. Now, I would submit that foreclosure should not happen. Maybe that's just me, but I don't think foreclosure should ever happen. There is always a way to work it out. You always have an option. And we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get back, because the biggest thing about foreclosures, of course, is not just what they are, but how to defend yourself against them. And that's kind of where I come in. That's what I spent the better part of the last 30 years doing, is helping people defend themselves from foreclosures. So now that we know what a foreclosure is, now that we've talked about the market a little bit, so you know where we're at the moment, and we've got judicial foreclosures versus non-judicial foreclosures, we're going to talk about what you can do to defend yourself. The meat of the show today is going to be defending yourself from foreclosure, what you can do. So we don't want to see houses go to foreclosure. We don't want to see you lose a house. We don't want to see anybody lose a house. And there's always a way to work it out. Where there's a will, there's a way in all things. I promise you. I've been doing this long enough to know that miracles do happen when it comes to this. You just have to put yourself in the place to do it. So I tell you what, let's go to a break. Let's hear from some of the advertisers. Let's hear from some of the folks who like to pay money for us to do these shows and run the station. It's great. We love our sponsors. Let's hear from them. When we come back, we're going to talk about foreclosure defense. Hello, welcome back. Thank you guys for listening through the break. I appreciate it. So we talked a little bit about the market. We talked about what a foreclosure is. I don't think you necessarily needed my definition or the California Courts Guide definition, but now you have it if you need it. Most importantly, though, let's talk about how you can defend yourself from a foreclosure, because this is the important part. So if you're in the unenviable position where you've missed a couple of payments, let's talk about how it works for us. Let's get into the time frame, and we'll talk about how to defend yourself. First thing to know is definitely the time frame. It is a legal process, and if the bank does not stick to the time frame, or if they violate any of this, then their notice is defective, and you can fight the foreclosure based on that. Just means they'll reset it usually and start over, but there are all sorts of little things and large things you can do to defend yourself. So first of all, as we just talked about in California, most foreclosures, I would say any foreclosure you're going to see on residential property, it'd be very strange if it wasn't, is going to be what's called a non-judicial foreclosure. And so that means it'll be sort of posted at the court, but not actually heard by the court. So it's a sort of court adjacent, for lack of a better description. So first thing that happens in the non-judicial foreclosure process, and this is the law in the state of California, this is an opinion, the bank doesn't get to make this up as they go along, this is the law. The first thing the lender has to do is they're supposed to contact you to talk to you about foreclosure avoidance assessment. That's what it's called, the foreclosure avoidance assessment, which means the bank or your servicer is supposed to call you when you default. When you are behind on your mortgage, they're supposed to call you. And I'm here to tell you that phone call 9 times out of 10 doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is because the banks don't have to prove they made the call. When you call a bank, they will tell you that everything is recorded and you're on a recorded line and all this good stuff. However, I can tell you from 30 years of experience, I have asked for those tapes repeatedly. Not once, not ever has any bank, major or minor, anywhere in this country that I've dealt with, and I've dealt with all of them, they have never produced a tape. They have never produced the vaunted recording of a conversation, not once, not ever. And in order to meet this requirement, all a bank has to do is sign an affidavit that said, yep, we tried. We definitely tried. Might have been the wrong number. Might have been calling the post office. Might have been the local Denny's. That's a true story. There was a bank not too long ago who their public relations department number was the phone number for a Denny's in Hollywood. Now, that's pretty funny, but not useful if you're trying to get a hold of their if you're trying to prevent a foreclosure by talking to their consumer helpline. So they do not make that call. They're supposed to. The law says they have to. And I'm just telling you, most banks don't. Some do, but most banks don't. So when they don't make the call, what will then happen is 30 days after that supposed contact, or after when they say they made the contact, the lender can then record a notice of default. We refer to it as an NOD, notice of default. So you'll hear me talking about it as NOD, notice of default. Now, what a notice of default is a lawsuit. It's the bank publishing with the court saying that they are foreclosing on your property. They intend to foreclose. You owe them money. You have defaulted. They intend to foreclose. Notice of default. They're giving the world notice that you have defaulted, and they intend to take your house. Now, a notice of default sits on its own, and it has to be what's called fully seasoned for 90 days. So you have 90 days from the filing of that notice of default, and after they file it, they have 10 days from filing it to get it to you. Now, they'll usually send it to you by certified mail, because this one they have to prove you received. So it's not hard. They send it certified, and because the law says they have to, they do. It's a funny thing about that with the banks. When the law says that they have to do something and be penalized if they don't, they do it. Whereas if they're given any wiggle room whatsoever, they will take advantage of it. So step one is they're supposed to contact you to do foreclosure avoidance assessment, which they don't do. At least most don't. Then 30 days after that contact, they can then file a notice of default. So the reality is when you're 30 days late on a mortgage, 60 days late on a mortgage, the bank will then file an NOD. Most banks will wait till about 90 days, but they can file them quicker than that. So you don't make your payment in January. That means January, February, March, they're filing an NOD, typically at the beginning of April. If you're really lucky, May. If you're really unlucky, it may be February. So because they can file an NOD within 30 days of the initial default, it usually takes 90. So that's what you got going there. Now, when a notice of default is filed, that is public information. The world knows that you got an NOD filed against you. And that's when the scams start. So this is the phase at which your foreclosure goes public, because an NOD is a public document. And when it goes public, you're going to have foreclosure scammers coming out of the woodwork. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show, but all kinds of stuff. You will get offers to buy your house. You will get all of these under the guise of helping you. You will get offers to buy your house. You will get offers to refinance your house. You will get offers for loans. You will get every unbelievable offer you can imagine. Most of them come with a price attached. Now, we do our thing for free. This is one of the reasons I do what I do for free. We do foreclosure defense for free in my office, is to separate ourselves from all of these scams. And I'm here to tell you, no matter how much the legislature does to prevent these scams, and we've done a lot in California over the 30 years I've been doing this, it's gotten much better because there were no rules when I got started, literally, or very few anyway. So it's gotten better. You're not allowed to charge up front. A number of things you're not allowed to do these days, but they are scams. And the key thing to ask anybody, you're going to help me prevent a foreclosure? Great. Put it in writing. What does it cost? Those two things will defend you from most scams. Put it in writing. I'm not agreeing to anything till I see it in writing. And what's it going to cost me? And anyone who cannot do those two simple things and cannot answer both of those very simple questions is not somebody you should be dealing with. What I say to clients all the time, I've been doing this forever, is anything I say has the same force and effect if it came out of my mouth as if it was written. So if you want me to put something in writing, just ask. I'll be happy to do it. I had a client last week. I said something to her and she said, "Oh, I learned something from you, Rich. You said I should have everything put in writing. Would you please put that in writing for me?" I said, "Sure. No problem. I wasn't offended. If I said it, I meant it. If I meant it, it has no problem being in writing." Same thing. It's not a big deal. I would submit that anybody you do business with, you ask them to put it in writing and they refuse, not somebody you should be doing business with. If you ask them how much it's going to cost and they can't answer that question, not somebody you should be doing business with. So those are a couple of heads ups. So after 90 days, so your NOD has now gotten to 90 days. It's become fully seasoned. On day number 91, although they can wait till later, on day number 91, the bank is going to file what's called a notice of sale. Now it's serious. It's been serious all along, but now it's worse. A notice of sale is the second to last step. There are only 4 steps in the foreclosure process. NOS is notice of sale. They have to file that on the 91st day or later after the filing of an NOD. I'm giving you the time frames because I want you to pay attention. If you get an NOD filed on your house and a bank attempts to file a notice of sale, an NOS, on day number 88, calendar days that is, including holidays. They can't file it on a holiday, but you still have to count those as days. So it's calendar days. If they try to file that on day number 89, you tell them no. Well, you let them file it, and then you explain to them that their filing is defective, and they got to start all over again. So that means new NOD, another 90 days, and they get to go over again. So the timeframes here are important. That's what I'm telling you. So on day number 91 or later, the bank has the ability, the financial institution has the ability to file a notice of sale. Now, typically what happens, let me stop here for a second. Typically what happens is the bank will hire a trustee. So if Bank of America is foreclosing on you, they're not going to foreclose on you themselves. They will hire a trustee to handle the foreclosure. They will send the title to a trustee. That trustee will handle the foreclosure. So 90 days after the NOD is filed, the bank can then file on day number 91 or thereafter, they can file a notice of sale. Now, a notice of sale, if the default is not cured, and you haven't paid back the money or haven't come to a deal, 21 days after the filing of the NOS, they will conduct the foreclosure sale. Now, sometimes bank will schedule out longer. We've got one that was just filed recently where they're 5 weeks out, not 3, which is helpful to us because we need that extra time to fix this one. But strictly speaking, when a bank files a notice of sale, 21 days later, or 20 days later, so on the 21st day, that is when they're conducting the foreclosure sale. So what does that mean? That means you got about 30 to 90 days after you miss the payment. Then you got 90 days from the filing of the NOD. Then you got about another 21 days, thereabouts, the filing of the NOS before it goes to foreclosure. So that basically gives you 3, 6, about 7 months, roughly 200 days from when you first miss a payment to when a bank is realistically going to foreclose. Now, the hard time frames come with the NOD, which is 90 days, and the NOS, which is 21 days. So that's 111 days from the filing of the NOD. So those are your numbers, about 200 days from missing a payment, 111 days from the filing of an NOD. That's the ticking clock we're chasing. And yeah, the fourth step is they will sell your house at auction. That's the fourth step. So first step, they contact you, which they don't do. Second step, they file an NOD, which you'll get multiple copies in the mail of, usually certified mail. Third step, they're going to file a notice of sale. 21 days after that, they're going to sell your house. So notice, NOD, NOS, sale of house. That's how it works. Those are the 4 steps. Now, when you get a notice of sale, this is important. When you get a notice of sale, that notice must be sent to you by certified mail, must be published weekly in a newspaper of general circulation in the county where your home is located for 3 consecutive weeks before the sale date, where it's public. It must be posted on your property as well as in a public place, usually at the local courthouse. So when a bank posts a notice of sale, if there are any one of those things they have not done or have not done properly, you can quash the sale and make them start over again. Now, don't try to do it based on they haven't taped the notice to my house because somewhere is going to sign an affidavit that said they did. Sometimes they don't. I'm here to tell you that it just happens. They do lie about these things. They're not supposed to, but they do. And so it gets posted on your house. So when you have a notice, when you get the actual notice, it's got to have the following. It's got to have the date, time, location of the foreclosure sale. We found some where they're not. And if it doesn't have all this in it, again, it's defective. They got to start over. The property address, of course, it has to have. The trustee name, address, and phone number, and a statement that the property will be sold at public auction. So unless they do those things, send it to you by certified mail, publish it in a newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks, and post it on your property as well as in public. And unless that notice contains the date, time, location of the foreclosure sale, the property address, the trustee name, address, and phone number, and a statement that the property will be sold in auction, if any of those things is missing, if any of those things is defective, you can force them to start over. Now, most trustees are pretty good at this. You're not going to find a whole lot of defects, but these are things you look for. It's the little things that make up the whole. So if that happens, you can use that as a protection. Now, it's just to give you more time typically, but it's a protection. Now, in my office, people tend to come to me in one of 4 states. The first type is, I have not missed a mortgage payment yet, Rich, but I know I'm going to. We can do all kinds of stuff. You got all kinds of options. You're not even in default yet. Option number 2, Rich, I missed a mortgage payment, but the bank hasn't filed a notice of default yet. So you're in default. You just haven't filed a notice yet. Still all kinds of stuff we can do. You got all kinds of options in front of you. You can do loan modifications. You can do workouts. There's the California California Mortgage Relief Plan through CalHFA, which is fantastic. There are all kinds of options out there for you. Third way people come in is they are now in default. A notice of default has been filed on my house, Rich, and I'm worried about foreclosure because I was going to do this, I was going to do that, and they've now filed an NOD. Well, an NOD makes things much more serious because, as we talked about, that is a lawsuit, and that is the bank telling the world they're foreclosing on your house. Unfortunately, the majority of the people in my office who come in after the NOD is filed. And that's okay. There's still a ton of stuff you can do. We have 90 days from the filing of that NOD to fix the problem. There's all sorts of stuff you could do. I mentioned the California Mortgage Relief Program, which will give you up to $80,000 for free. It comes out of the Federal American Rescue Plan, which has given California $1 billion to give out. And that is a fantastic program. And the people down there are working their tails off, giving away money, which is fantastic. I've been lucky enough to meet some of the people down there. We've had them on the show, and I will tell you, they're wonderful to work with. We're actually been running tally in my office right now as to how much money we've gotten out of that program so far, and we're a little over $1.5 million. And I'm trying to get us up to $10 million, our little office that we've gotten out of that program before the program folds up shop and goes home. And at $80,000 a pop, that's a fair amount of people we've sent to that program. And you don't even know to do it. You can go straight to them. They're great. It's the California Mortgage Relief Program, and it's through CalHFA. They will give you up to $80,000 to cure a mortgage default for free. You do not have to pay it back. I've been doing this for 30 years. I cannot remember the last time I saw free money from the government that was actually accessible. And they make it pretty easy to get to. And if you're having trouble, give me a call. I'll help. I'll walk you through it. You can always reach me. I can be reached at 661-714-1400. You can reach me anytime, day or night. If I don't answer, send me a text. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if I'm on the air, I notice we already got a couple of calls. My phone is buzzing in my pocket right now. Note about this. I'll call you back as soon as I possibly can. But yeah, that's free money. And that's just one of the ways to defend yourself. So if you get yourself into foreclosure, if you come into one of those first 3, and then of course the second one is the NOD is fully seasoned, they have scheduled a sale of my house. Now, if you come to me for the first type where you haven't missed a payment yet, all kinds of stuff we can do. You come to me as the second type, you've missed a payment but no notice of default, all kinds of stuff we can do. You come to me even with a notice of default already filed on your property. We're fighting a ticking clock, but still all kinds of options, all sorts of stuff we can do for you. If you come into the fourth category where the notice of sale has already been set, well, now we got a new problem because when the notice of sale has already been filed, we are at the end of it. If you call me the day it gets filed, we only got 20 days, and usually it takes a week after that. So we got a short time. Now, in a case like that, we either need to find defect or find some other way to cure the default immediately. And in a case like that, you may be talking about a bankruptcy. So let's talk about some of the remedies we can get into for protecting yourself against foreclosure, because you have the right to stop the foreclosure process. You can always pay it off 5 days before it's due. Typically, you can actually do it up to the day. We try to do 5 days before. So you can always pay it current. That'll stop a foreclosure. Most lenders will allow you to cure a default amount, pay the amount due to reinstate if your loan is within 3 days. So you can pay the entire loan within 5 days. You can typically reinstate, pay the past due amount within 3 days. Obviously, if you could do that, you probably wouldn't be in foreclosure. You can file for bankruptcy at any time. If you need to file for bankruptcy, there are people I can recommend to you. I recommend Lou Esmond. His office is fantastic. We use him all the time. There are other bankruptcy attorneys in town that are very good as well. Like I said, I recommend Lou and his office. They're wonderful. And bankruptcy is often the way out of this. So that's definitely something you need to consider. But bankruptcies, these are the acts of last resort. Paying it due, filing a bankruptcy, that you do and you have nothing else. There is a better way to go even after you receive an NOD. first of all, contact me. 661-714-1400. We'll put you on the track. Every situation is unique. We'll get you sorted. Our success rate's about 80%. Our failure rate's 20%. Never seems to change. It's very frustrating. So that means 80% of the people who call me who are in trouble, we get them a permanent solution. 20%, we obviously can't help. So if you have no income and you're facing an NOS already, your options are going to become much more limited than if you're not even behind yet and you just haven't missed a payment. So obviously the sooner you get to me, the better. Now, the first thing we do, regardless of your situation, is we get written authorization to talk to the bank. We're going to reach out to the bank with your authorization. We do not want the authority to do anything on your behalf. That's not our gig. We do want to, because we can't make any decisions. We can gather information. We can do all sorts of stuff to get you going. So the first thing we're going to do is ask the bank, you have the right to this as a consumer, for the records on the loan. I want to see the note that created the loan. I want to see the accounting going back to the inception of the loan. I want to see any assignments from Bank A to Bank B or anybody else. And I want to see the foreclosure history. And the bank has to provide all of that to you within 30 days. They can send you a note and get an extra 15 days, but realistically, they have 45 days to get that to you. And just asking for it sometimes will stall the foreclosure because the bank's getting a little worried. Do they have the records or do they not? Do they not? We found one recently where there was 14 years worth of banking records missing. You can't foreclose on a house with 14 years of missing records. Now, the bank thought they could, and we disabused them of that knowledge. We got a nice loan modification out of the deal that the client ordinarily wouldn't have gotten because we found this 14-year error. So you look through these things and you look for reversible error. It's boring. It's not exciting. It's like being an accountant, basically. No offense to my friends who are accountants. But and it's not something most homeowners are going to do or know how to do. We do it. We do it all the time. And if we can find something in there, usually we won't, but if we can find something in there, you can use that. You can ask your bank for a loan modification. That is probably your best weapon next to the California Mortgage Relief Program because that's free money. A loan modification is you ask your bank to modify the loan. The bank and their investor are better off keeping you paying than they are by foreclosing. Now, sometimes we have to explain that to the bank because they don't always understand the math. But the math is very simple. No matter what business school you went to, 2% of something, or these days 7.5% of something, is still better than 100% of nothing. A bank usually, always, I would even say, will make more money by continuing to service a loan than they will by flushing it out and foreclosing on it. Sometimes you have to explain that to the bank. Sometimes you have to do it slowly. That's just the way it works. So you've got to convince the bank that it's in their interest. And that is the key. Most people go wrong when they ask for a loan modification, when they ask for help from their bank, because they go to the bank with what they need. I can't afford my payment. I need this. I need that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not as good an approach as going to the bank with what they need. Hey, bank, sorry I can't make my payment. Here's my situation. But instead of all of us losing money on this and me losing my house, let's see if we can find a way to work together so that I get to keep my house and you guys get to keep making money on my loan. That really is the approach you need to take. What can we do? This is how you speak bank, right? This is how you speak their language. What can we do that is in their financial best interest as well as yours? What can we do for the bank that's better than a foreclosure? Now, I don't like the banks. I'm not on their side with this kind of stuff, but that's the way you got to talk to them. What is in their interest to do? That's how you make that work. And that's the chief thing you can do. So again, CalHalf is a great option for you. Loan modification is a great option for you. Bankruptcy may be an option for you. Structured settlement. You may be able to settle the debt by paying them less than you owe, especially if it's a junior financing. Structured settlement's good for you. Repayment plan. Most banks, heck, all banks will offer some sort of repayment plan. Usually it's over 12 months and it's usually really expensive. Whereas in a bankruptcy, it's usually over 5 years. So that might be better. But repayment plans are also a possibility. So you got all kinds of options. The point I want you to take away from this is there are options out there for you. And there are options. Everybody out there wants you to keep making that payment. They want to see this thing succeed. You want to see it succeed. So there are options out there. So if you get caught with a foreclosure, and we're going to talk about some of the laws of protection, some of the scams I see next. But if you get caught with a foreclosure, here's all you really need to know. I can get all of the pedantics of this with you later if you like and go through it again if you'd like. But just call me. I can be reached at 661-714-1400. I did not set out to become an expert in foreclosure defense, but I have become one over the 30 years I've been doing this. 661-714-1400. And again, we do this totally for free. I don't want to charge people who are already in trouble. I think that's wrong. It's just a thing with me. So we do it for free. Don't get me wrong. I expect to be your realtor in the future. That's how we pay for all this. But we do foreclosure defense for free, and we have for 30 years. We're not going to start charging for it anytime soon. 661-714-1400 is my number. My name is Rich Szerman. I will help you with your foreclosure problems. I will get you out of this mess. So I tell you what, let's hear from some more sponsors. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the scams I've seen and some of the other stuff, some of the laws you need to look into. I'm Rich Szerman. You've reached the Real Estate Fix with Rich Szerman on KHTS 98.1 FM AM1220, your hometown station.com. Hello, welcome back. You've reached the Real Estate Fix with Rich Szerman. I'm your host on KHTS 98.1, AM1220, your hometown station. Thank you guys for tuning in. For the last segment of the show, we've talked a little about foreclosures and how they work and kind of how it goes in California. Most important thing is if you find yourself in foreclosure, give me a call because I can find a way to get you out of it. We do that for free. We've been doing it for years. I'm happy to help you. I've helped thousands and thousands of people. There are all kinds of families all over Southern California, and especially here in Santa Clarita, who are still in their homes to this day because of work we did for them. And they will all tell you we did it completely for free. We have never charged anybody for foreclosure defense. It's not something we do. I think if your house is on fire, having the fire department charge you to put it out would be wrong. Not that I want to compare myself to firefighters. Their job is much more difficult, and they are far braver than I am. I just yell at banks on a regular basis and get people out of foreclosure because I think the banks are wrong, and I think the clients are right. So anyway, I want to talk about, before we wrap up today, I want to talk about foreclosure rescue scams because these are on the rise. The more difficult an economy gets, the more people that go into default, the more opportunity there are for scams. And as we talked about earlier, when a notice of default, that's when you're more than 30, 60, 90 days behind and the bank files that. That's a document that is public. And because it's a lawsuit, because it's public, you go into the NOD database whenever a notice of default is filed. And when that happens, they come out of the woodwork. You're going to see all kinds of scams. So many, in fact, that the California Attorney General's office put out a foreclosure rescue scam guide. You wouldn't think they'd have to do that, but they do because scams are crazy. And we've seen so much weird stuff over the years. I've seen fake title. I've seen fake notaries. I've certainly seen fake notes and fake mortgages. I've seen whole fake companies. I got into this years ago because a client of mine called me up and she said for the bargain basement price of $13,000, some guy's going to lower her mortgage payment by $200 a month. And that sounded strange to me. That was before we had something called loan modifications. We used to call them write-downs back then. And in looking into it, the guy was a total con artist. I got him on the phone. This was before the internet, so it's been a while. I got him on the phone, asked him some pointed questions. He didn't have answers. The next day, his phone number was disconnected. The address he gave me turned out to be a mailboxes etc. on Ventura Boulevard. And he was looking to scam an 85-year-old woman out of her house. And he would have done it, too, had I not stepped in. These sort of things are rampant. So, according to the California Attorney General's office, if someone who is not your mortgage lender promises to save your home and ask you to pay money up front, be aware. Fraudulent foreclosure consultants target homeowners who are behind on their mortgage payments. Now, I find this particularly insulting because I do this for free. I do this to save people. I do this to keep them in their homes. And I do this because that's a source of future business for me. When you save somebody's house from foreclosure, you tend to be, and you do it for free. Most people are pretty happy with the work that we do. Frankly, most people are amazed at the work that we do, which is always nice to hear. And they come back to us year in and year out. And we appreciate that. And they send us their friends and their relatives. And that's the short course on how to become successful in a realtor from where I sit. Do a lot of work up front for free. Continue to do that work for free. And if you're lucky, people will think well of you and come back and see you again. That's the idea. So anyone who is charging you for foreclosure defense, do not pay. And if they're charging you up front, you absolutely, not only should you not pay them, it is illegal for them to do that. Now, a lot of companies get away with that because they'll have an attorney on staff, so they'll call it a retainer, and you'll think you're hiring an attorney, but you never talk to the attorney. It's just some flunky who has an attorney's license number attached to it. We have attorneys in my office, too. And if you need them, they can help you. My wife is one of them. So hi, honey, if you're listening, I'm volunteering you for free work yet again. She loves it when I volunteer for pro bono work because she finds plenty of it on her own. But I volunteer for stuff all the time, and she's usually very nice about it. To the client, that is. She yells at me. Well, she doesn't yell. She just says I have to make dinner because she's working on free client stuff for clients, which is totally fair. So we do have attorneys on staff. We have another in the office too named Richard Becker. Hi, if you're listening, Rich. He also has been around forever. He's also a very, very good attorney. So we have attorneys available to you if you need them. And of course, my whole staff is there to do this stuff. We've been doing it forever. So do not pay somebody up front, ever. I don't think you should pay at all, but certainly don't pay them up front. Don't pay upfront fees. Foreclosure consultants are prohibited by law from collecting money before services are performed. So says the California Attorney General's office. Don't ignore letters from your lender or loan servicer. Responding to those letters is your best bet for saving your house. I agree with that, but you're better off responding to those things through a consultant. So the neutral third party can help you out with that stuff, which is where we come in. Don't transfer title or sell your home to a foreclosure rescuer. Beware, this is a scam to convince homeowners they can stay in their home as renters and buy their home back later. It might also be part of a fraudulent bankruptcy filing. Either way, a scammer can then evict the victim and take the home. We see these all the time. Sell me your house and I'll rent it to you super cheap. That is one of the most common scams out there, and I'm here to tell you it is a scam. They buy the house, they let you rent it for about 5 minutes, and then they evict you. And you say, no, that wasn't our deal. And they say, too bad, get out, I own the house. So yeah, it is absolutely a scam, and it's a potent one. You should never be transferring the title to your house. You should never be selling your house under these circumstances, except with a licensed realtor with a complete sale. And you really ought to have some mortgage defense help to do that. Whether it's me, whether it's an attorney, whatever, get yourself somebody who knows more than you do. Don't pay your mortgage payments to anyone other than your lender or loan servicer. Mortgage consultants often keep the money for themselves. If somebody tells you, make your mortgage payment to me and I will forward it on to the bank, run. That is absolutely a scam. It is absolutely illegal. Another one we see all the time. You can't pay someone else to pay your mortgage. If you're going to pay your mortgage, pay the bank. Never sign any documents without reading them first. That should be obvious just in life. Many homeowners think they are signing documents or loan modification or for a new loan to pay off the mortgage they are behind on. Later, they discover that it's actually transferred ownership to their home to someone who's now trying to evict them. You can unintentionally transfer your home. Don't do that. Do contact a housing counselor approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD counselors, they're very well-meaning. They work very hard, but unfortunately, I find that most HUD counselors just don't know enough. They don't have enough training. They're just not there. We work with them all the time. I think they're wonderful. My office is happy to work with HUD counselors. If you already have one or if you want to get one, we can do that too. If you have transferred your property or paid someone to rescue your apartment foreclosure, you may be a victim of a crime. Please register a complaint with the Attorney General's office. That's how these guys get caught. You've got to tell the Attorney General about them. You can call the Attorney General's office at 800-952-5225. I want to repeat that. The 800 number for the Attorney General's office in the state of California, 800-952-5225. Now, if you were scared, if you're worried about talking to the Attorney General, I will do it for you. I have no issue. I talk to him more regularly than I'd like. Not the Attorney General himself, but the office. We've got this down to a science, so we file the complaints because we see them a lot. I will be more than happy to file the complaint with you. So do not pay somebody up front. Do not ignore letters from your lender. Do not transfer title or sell your house to these foreclosure rescue companies because that's not what they do. Do not pay mortgage payments to anyone other than your lender. Never sign any documents without reading them, and do contact a housing counselor. If you follow those simple rules, you should be fine. And if you get any ads in the mail that look ridiculous, please send them to me because I keep a file, and it is hysterical. One day I'm going to publish the whole thing because some of them are really, really funny. And they're just ham-fisted. And what they're out there for, they are there to take advantage of your misery. That doesn't mean they're not going to loan you the money. There are plenty of lenders out there that will loan you the money. They'll do it at an outrageous percentage. We were talking about one last week that a client of mine got. I have in my hand here. I've been carrying this around. That the default interest rate on this loan they were going to do for the client of mine, this is a real loan, 32% or 31.99. I don't think most people in default can afford a 32% interest rate, especially not one that in 2 years they're going to loan $415,000. She only needs 35. They're going to loan her $415,000, and she's going to pay back $535, and that's if she doesn't default, which she will. She has no income. They're doing this loan because they know they're going to take her house. This is a vulture foreclosure waiting to happen. That is a vulture capitalist, a vulture loan. They are bad. So you've got to be aware because when you go into foreclosure, you make yourself a target for every crooked con artist and scumbag out there. Hope I'm allowed to use the word scumbag. Hope the FCC doesn't get mad because I call them that because people steal from people. Bad people out there. Call them whatever you like. But you make yourself a target for everyone out there that's going to come after you. So you've got to be aware of that. So, and ultimately, just call me. You can reach me at 661-714-1400. My name is Rich Szerman. I'm happy to help you morning, noon, and night. And we do this for free. Again, 661-714-1400. That is the number you need to get yourself out of this. Now, one last thing before we wrap up the show. I see we're running out of time. I want to again mention the BBMS Hopeful Family Futures fundraiser at Casa Gutierrez out in Lake Elizabeth, 8847 Elizabeth Lake Road. This weekend, October 1st from 11 to 3 p.m. Anything you buy at Casa Gutierrez, 10% will go to families in recovery from addiction and victims of domestic violence. BBMS is the charity. You should go out there and help those folks. They are lovely. They are wonderful. They will, if you've been in trouble with that, you need help, they will do it. They will help raise money for that. I'm Rich Szerman. You've been listening to The Real Estate Fix on 98.1
The shows must go on. The main incentive.